delve into the polity of the Nigerian state as it concerns you. I am Chike Ogbogu. On the agenda today, 22 days after suspending the scale of petroleum products in Naira, the Dangote refinery has resumed sales of its refined petroleum products to its partners and marketers in local currency. The 650,000 barrels facility has also informed marketers and customers of a downward review of its loading costs, reducing its ex-gantry price to 865 Naira per litre. Of course, that's a move that could ease pressure on fuel prices across the country. The new price is a reduction of 15 Naira from 880 Naira per litre sold by the facility on Wednesday. The notice sent to marketers indicated that a litre of petrol will now be sold for about 865 Naira, inclusive of charges by the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority. Recall that on Wednesday, the Federal Executive Council, after an initial delay, directed the full implementation of the suspended Naira for Crude agreement with local refiners. It said the initiative with local refineries is not a temporary measure, but a key policy directive designed to support sustainable local refining. With me this morning is my guest for us to look at these issues. Naira for Crude in Nigeria, Dolapo Anjorin. It's good to have you this morning, Dolapo.
Yeah, top of the morning to you, Mr. Chike. It's my pleasure to be here this morning in your studio.
All right, well, Naira for Crude, Naira for Crude. It's been a debate ongoing, and it was suspended at some point, and then the Federal Executive Council, after its meeting, that's on Wednesday, had to come out and say, yes, it is back on. What is the implication of this in the economy, especially when you look at issues of policy implementation and policy somersault at this time?
Thank you very much. I think it is important to actually look at this discussion beyond the headlines. When you look at the policy of the Naira for Crude policy on its own, the main objectives of this policy is to help ease the pressure on FX. It is also to help at least bring a reasonable stability to the price of PMS. Fortunately, we have a gazette, which is a bill called PIA, Petroleum Industry Act bill, that actually supports this policy. I think that that section of the PIA can be found, I think, section 104.
Yeah, 104.
Yeah, 104 of the PIA. So the main objective of this policy is to help bring rest to the pressure that is put on the scarce FX that the CBN has, and just like I said, bring a little bit a reasonable price stability, and to also stimulate the local refinery, because the PIA also provides for the midstream petroleum sector. Formerly, before the PIA came into play, we always have the upper stream sector, we have the downstream sector, but now we have the midstream sector where refineries like Dangote actually belongs to. We have Aradel, we have Walter Smith, in this midstream sector. So it helps this midstream sector. It gives them that flexibility to actually buy crude either in dollars or in Naira, just like the section 104 of the PIA stipulated.
Well, will this policy also help bring up the value of the Naira in the economy?
Just like I said, we need to look at the structural defects and look beyond the headlines, in this policy. Because I, for a person, I can see a structural defect in this policy. And one of the policy is that, take as an instance, at the start of this refinery for Dangote, The NNPC actually promised Dangote about 385,000 barrels of crude oil per day, but they've not been able to meet that expectation. I think Dangote has been supplied with about between 110 to 120,000 barrels of crude oil per day. So it means that Dangote would need to, look at international ventures to actually, import, the shortfall of this crude oil, because when you look at the refining capacity of Dangote refinery is about 650,000 barrels per day. That's the refining capacity for Dangote refinery. And you also have the position that the NNPC has also taken. The reason why they have not been able to meet up with this target with Dangote is because they have actually entered into agreement with international ventures that the business that we call a forward sale agreement, whereby they have used our crude oil as collateral for borrowings with people, or let me say companies, international companies that actually deliver these products, trade companies that deliver these products at our ports. So you look at some of these things. Nigeria has crude oil. We have a state-owned enterprise that has promised, to give or let me say produce crude oil for our midstream sector of the economy to thrive. And we also have this same midstream sector of the petroleum sector importing PMS. Can you see the contradictions? So, and we are saying we want a strong Naira. There's no way we can have a strong Naira, because even Dangote, with the current reality, is also importing crude oil from Iran, is importing crude from Malta, is importing crude from Saudi Aramco. A lot of international ventures that deals in crude oil exports. So, and we say we want to have a reasonable price system in Nigeria where Nigerians can actually, buy PMS at a reasonable price. I don't think we are ready yet for, a strong Naira. These are the structural defects, in this policy.
Well, you see, you've looked at the policy. You've highlighted the positives, you've highlighted the negatives, and you've also highlighted things that could be done to get the negatives to positives. Yeah. However, when we look at it realistically, the policy is on one side. How about the reality on ground for the average Nigerian, especially when it comes to the downstream oil sector? What is the reality versus the policy on ground?
Well, like I said at Benicio at the start of this program, this Naira for Good policy is aimed at, bringing, what do they call it now? Is aimed at bringing, a soft landing for Nigerians, so that Nigerians can be able to afford reasonable petroleum motor spirits. But unfortunately, the major refiner that we have in the country, which is Dangote, does not play at the downstream sector of the economy, because the PIA actually forbids him to do that, except you are operating an energy integrated services. That's why you see the likes of Ohando, divesting their business in the first place. So anything that happened outside the gate of the refinery for Dangote, it doesn't concern him, because he's not dealing at the downstream sector, which means Dangote cannot own a petrol station to actually say, okay, he wants to subsidize this petroleum motor spirit for Nigerians. But as it is, on paper, the policy is good. But in reality, the way it's being practiced, I don't see how that can cushion the effects for everyday Nigerians.
Well, you said something earlier. You said NNPC, the reason NNPC has collateralized crude in global forward sale loan agreements. You mentioned that already.
Yes, yes.
However, why is NNPC still importing PMS?
Well, the reason is not far-fetched. NNPC as a state-owned enterprise, at least according to...
You know why I asked that question?
Okay.
Many will say, oh, yeah, this we should have our refineries working. NNPC is supposed to get crude, fax it to our refineries, they're refined. And then there was a time the federal government came out saying that the Port Harcourt refinery was working already, and the Kaduna refinery also coming up and all that. But the question is, if these things are really working on ground, why are we still importing PMS as NNPCL? Because at the end of the day, you find out that you're even spending more dollar to import PMS.
Exactly.
So for us to have cash for crude, I believe that this cash for crude will work better and work well if we start refining from Nigeria, especially optimum refining from our refineries. But why is NNPC still importing PMS?
That's a very good question. Number one, we have two working refineries that said, according to the federal government and NNPC, they said we have two refineries that are working. That is Port Harcourt, which is LMF Phase 5. We also have the Warri refinery. For Port Harcourt LMF Phase 5, it has an installed capacity of 60,000. Then for Warri refinery, it has an installed capacity of 125,000
barrels per day.
Yeah, capacity to operate at that level. So when we do the math, that is about 185,000 capacity per day. So when you now look at it, in 1 barrel of crude oil, you will get 73 liters of crude oil, from 1 barrel of crude oil. So if you do the maths, that is about 13.5 liters of PMS, 30.5 million liters of PMS, every day. That's the production capacity for both refinery. And you look at NNPC as a state-owned enterprise. They do not even have up to 2,000 subsidiaries, in the whole of Nigeria. And that is one. That's the reason why when you look at it logically, the refineries are not working. Number two, those refineries were not actually built to produce PMS.
What were they built for?
Yes, the companies that built them, I'm talking about Shell BP, Shell and British Petroleum. They built them as a huge modular refinery. For shallow offshore work that they do. So they produce what we call naphtha, they produce LPFO.
Those
they
are
produce
like byproducts of
they produce AGO. These elements are actually needed, for their operations, in their shallow deep water offshore.
So wait, so let's hold it there.
No, hold on.
If you're saying that the refineries were not built to produce PMS,
yes.
So have Nigerians been deceived all the while?
Hold on. It lacks an important component called CRU. It's called catalytic reforming unit.
Okay.
Yes, it is the CRU that actually distill, the naphtha element to get PMS.
Okay.
This component is not in these refineries that we are talking about. I have read about it, and this is the logical argument I can actually, bring out to say that the refineries are not working. Another point to say that the refineries are not working, in my own opinion, is if you are refining crude oil, you need to, produce, let me put it this way. When you are refining crude oil that is producing, or that is going to produce a higher distilling PMS, you need what we call LPG, liquefied petroleum gas. Let me just situate it this way in a layman's language. Can you burn a firewood to get charcoal without smoke? The answer is no. So if you are producing PMS, where is the LPG? The LPG we are talking about is what is producing what we call propane gas, the gas with which Nigeria is using to cook in our everyday lives. So it's not producing that. I am here to see it, and I think I am actually throwing down the gauntlet to the government and particularly to the NNPC, to actually come and disprove these facts and say that they have been producing LPG, and those refineries actually have CRU, the catalytic reforming units, built in those refinery. We need to see them. So if they are saying that the refineries are working, number one, back to your question, why are they importing PMS? Now, according to the motor vessel transport data, in the last 6 months, about 4.6 billion liters of PMS has been imported into the country. Out of the 4.6 billion liters, NNPC has 41.5% of those of that 4.6 billion liters of PMS that was imported into the country. That's about, if you do the rough calculation, that's about 212 million liters of PMS. And you begin to wonder, why are they importing this much if the refineries are actually working as they said? Of course, the refinery may not have the capacity that Dangote has, but if it is actually working, even if they are going to import PMS, it shouldn't be 212 million liters of PMS, which now leads me, to another question. What exactly is the actual number of PMS that we are consuming every day?
We'll get there. We'll get to that. But you see, before we get to that, you've made your point. Shouldn't we be producing locally?
Exactly.
If we know the refineries are working. But from what you just said now, it obviously means that the refineries were actually working, just that they were not producing PMS.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
They are just modular refineries. It wasn't built, to actually produce PMS.
So those that have been saying that the Port Harcourt refinery, Warri refinery have not been working, it's actually working, but working for different products, not for PMS.
Exactly.
That's what we established.
That's the best explanation I can give to it.
All right.
Logical explanation.
We'll go on this break. When we come back, more talking points on the Naira for crude. Stick around, don't go away.
Welcome to Dominion Broadcast House, your channel of choice, with the best stories and the best songs, where inspiration meets entertainment.
From powerful stories to thought-provoking conversations, we bring you content that informs, entertains, and transforms.
Catch top-notch entertainment, including movies, talk shows, and insightful programs curated just for you.
Looking for cutting-edge documentaries, exclusive interviews, and lifestyle shows that matter? We have got it all.
Stay ahead with the latest trends, inspiring success stories, and must-watch TV moments only on Dominion Television.
Join a community that celebrates excellence, innovation, and African storytelling at its finest.
Don't miss out. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on all our social media platforms, and watch Dominion Television today.
Welcome back from that break. Still the agenda on Dominion broadcast group. And this morning, we've been looking at the Naira for crude. Dolapo Anjorin also making some sense from this discussion this morning. All right, before we went on that break, it was established that, yeah, these refineries have been working all the while, just that they were not producing, refining PMS. That's the premium motor spirit. Back to you, Dolapo. I've been having issues, and I'm going to ask you this. Maybe you have answers to this. NNPC has been telling us they produce a specific number of barrels per day. However, we've not seen data to this effect. We don't know how much Nigeria produces in a day. especially when it comes to crude. And we don't even know how much we're exporting per day. Do you have an idea?
Well, the subunits, or let me say the agency that is saddled with this responsibility is called MPDRA. I don't think they have an actual framework, you know, that helps them determine the actual number of crude, actual number of PMS that Nigerians consumed on a daily basis. I think what they do is they do it, they just project.
So is it not fair to say that if you can't find out how much crude is being refined or being taken out in a day in the country, you can't determine how much PMS is consumed in a day?
Okay.
Is that it?
Before we come to that, in 2002, it was reported that the daily consumption for PMS for Nigerians is about 21 million. Between 2002 to 2012, that's about 7 to 9% consumption rates. Now, between 2009 down to 2025, it has gone above 9%, and it's within the range of 250%. You know, that means if you do the maths, daily consumption for PMS in Nigeria alone is about 90 million every day. And
well, that could be attributed to population increase?
No. When you look at the what we call the CAGR, the compound annual growth rates of what you have consumed between 2002 and 2025, it's abnormal if you are going to be drawing, you know, an economic curve for that, because population per time over these years has always grown for like 3% every year. So to say we are consuming 90 million of PMS, or let me put it at a
that's 90 million liters
of PMS, or let me put at a conservative rate of 50 million. I don't think that is right. I think there is some people out there who are just trying to concoct figures out of a thin air. You know, I don't know why they are doing that, because there is this important section in the PIA, which I would like to. I think
that's section 317.
Yeah, section 317. The section 317 is trying to say, yes, it's trying to say that if your domestic capacity, you know, can produce up to 70% or 80% of PMS needed to the market, you need to stop giving import licenses or withdraw existing import licenses. And this brings me to say that if you ask me to give you a true conservative estimate of what Nigerians may be consuming in terms of the liters of PMS, I would tell you that it shouldn't be more than 30 to 35 million liters of PMS per day.
Okay.
So when you now look at the numbers, according to the motor vessel tanker data, because these are data on the manifest of the ship, and whatever is in the manifest is in the manifest. 4.6 billion liters of PMS. And out of the 4.6 billion liters of PMS, NNPC has 212 million liters of PMS. So the maths does not add up. Okay. Is it that we are creating a new set of cabals who is profiting illegally from the importation of these products?
Okay.
Or is there some underhand dealings?
Or is there an existing
exactly
group of people. I don't want to use the word cabal. Is there an existing group of people
who
have been profiting from
yes, exactly, from, because what I see here is a sleaze. Is a sleaze, because there's no actual data, and that's where the gap is majorly. So you find out is not adding up.
So you're saying that
reality,
if we combine
yes,
what NNPC is bringing on board and what Dangote is producing now, that we shouldn't even have any cost to even import fuel.
Yes, we shouldn't have any cost to import fuel, because when you look at what Dangote is producing with the 120,000 barrels of oil that the NNPC is giving him on a monthly basis, that should amount to about 44 million liters of PMS. So
we shouldn't even look at
exactly. So we shouldn't even be looking at saying that Nigerians are consuming about 50 to 90 million PMS, 90 million liters of PMS on a daily basis. And this is the exact reason why, I don't know if you remember, I think last year, Dangote actually has taken the regulators of this regulator, he has taken them to court, so that the courts can actually interpret this section 317 of the PIA. So these are the issues. So these are the things we need to be interrogating.
All right, well, we need to interrogate all these things and then make some sense out of some of these things. Well, looking at the refining capacity versus the feedback allocation,
yes,
is still there. We're trying to make some sense out of some of these things about Warri Refinery's capacity, and also looking at the Port Harcourt Refinery capacity. Yeah, you mentioned that earlier on. Warri, yes, 125,000 barrels per day, while the Port Harcourt Refinery does about 60,000 barrels per day. Well, that was the design by Shell BP. And then we look at the forest drain paradox too. Nigeria's export crude dominated in the US dollars collateralized for loans. You look at all these economic, I call them economic jargons here.
It's not actually jargons.
No, well, in economics, you call them jargons because to the layman, they might not understand some of these economic principles. So you call them economic jargons here. But for us, it's making some sense right now, yes, that we don't need to even import fuel at all. What we have is already enough for Nigerians. However, some underdealings might just be taking place at the moment. Well, now Naira for crude sales. Dangote Refinery will now be buying crude officially, as announced by the federal government, in Naira. So what will be the implication of this? We've set the foundation, we've laid the foundation already. Now the discussion proper. Crude, Naira for crude, what will be the implication, especially when it comes to the pump price of PMS in Nigeria?
Well, it is expected that if Dangote actually goes through with this, it is expected that over time there would be a drop in the price of PMS locally, which means in Naira. We would probably be looking at, maybe, I'm just speculating, probably be looking at between, let's say, 700 and 750. It probably is going to be hovering around that price, because it's not totally going to crash down the price of PMS in Naira. So it is expected that there will be a reasonable drop in price of PMS. Then it is also expected that it will also stimulate the midstream sector of the midstream sector of the oil industry. Already we have Aradel, we have Walter Smith. I think we have about nine companies in that midstream sector, and it will also bring even more players into that sector. So we also expect that there would be at least a breather, on our FX.
Okay.
Yes, all things being equal, if everything is actually done by the book.
So if Dangote will be buying crude in Naira, will our foreign clients, foreign customers, also buy in Naira? Will they source for Naira to buy crude too?
No, they will not. They won't.
So what is good for the goose is also good for the gander. If Dangote is going to be buying in Naira, his crude produced in Nigeria, then whoever is in Pakistan or Philippines trying to buy Nigerian crude should also source for Naira. I
need you to understand that the reason why Dangote is buying in Naira is because of the PIA. Is the reason why he's buying in Naira. The business of crude oil, is traded in dollars. It's an international good. Whether your refinery is located in Ibadan, whether it's located in Ogun State or anywhere in the world, you must trade with dollars. So it's not a thing of compulsion.
But it is not cast in stones. Because if you look at what happened, what's happening right now in Europe, the Russia-Ukraine crisis, and when the whole war started, what did Russia do with Gazprom? Russia started selling gas in their own local currency, in rubles, and not in euros.
They started doing that.
The rubles became stronger.
They started doing that because there was an embargo on trade. And when you look at the agreement going on between Russia and the US now, you will find out that even Dangote is trying to deal with Russia at the moment
in what sense?
To see if he can get more crude from them. Because at the moment, I would say 80% of the crude oil that we produce in Nigeria has been bargained in a forward sale agreement.
They've been collateralized.
Yes, they've been collateralized
by the
NNPC. And we are talking about to the tune of about, I think, $15 billion or so. And I think, according to reports, if it is true, there's still one in the pipeline that will go for about $7.5 billion. So you begin to look at some of these things. Are we going to be self-sufficient, in the production of these crude oil products? Because at the long run, we are the one cheating ourselves. Because the lender is the one gaining. We are the borrower. Don't forget that we would also pay with interest, even with an inflationary amount of what you have actually borrowed. We would pay for it. So we are borrowing for the future to actually, service the event of today. We need to factor all these things into the mix. And you take a look at the budget also, where the oil price has been benchmarked at $70, and you look at the fluctuations, in the international market when it comes to prices of crude oil. 56%, is expected from the proceeds of, that benchmark from crude oil is what is expected, to fund the budget. The remaining amount of money would, be sourced externally. Of course, we all know that it's going to be loans, credits, and all that. So when you juggle all these things...
I still have many questions to ask on this issue because it's getting clearer. So what if in the international market, the cost of or the price of crude drops from $70, which is the benchmark for the Nigerian budget, if it drops to as low as $40, how do we then service?
Maneuver, yes.
Yeah, how do we service our budget? Because these are questions begging for answers.
And you also have the smuggling. Of course, you also have the smuggling going on.
Vandalization of pipelines. Explosion of...
Have we been able to meet the OPEC quota? At what capacity are we going to be producing?
Should we be thinking about OPEC now? Why not we think about servicing our country first and seeing how the price of these commodities will crash instead of thinking about OPEC? Is OPEC thinking about Nigeria too? No, we need to think about these things too. And then it's a good thing. The PIA is a very wonderful
thing. Yes, of course.
Naira for good.
Yeah,
and Naira for crude.
It's so obvious that we are not following the laid down rules and regulations in the PIA.
Well,
those
captains of the industry, the petroleum industry,
yes,
may not be following. That's what you are saying.
Yes.
However, my question now is, Naira for crude, for me, it's a good deal, a good good policy. However, the implementation might just be faulty in the sense that we don't have a transparent data
Of course.
So, how will it work? Dangote, I'm not speaking for him now, but a refinery that was built in dollars, investments in dollars, and now you're buying crude in Naira in Nigeria. And then other people outside the country will buy that same crude in hard currency. Who will be running at a loss at this time?
That is very difficult to. That's very difficult to.
But answer. I feel it's logical.
It is what it is actually. Like I said earlier on, this is not a local commodity. It is an international commodity.
So let's deal with it internationally. Why Naira for crude when there's no transparency, as it were?
The Naira is not at the same par with the dollar.
Okay, so if Dangote now buys crude in Naira, will it increase the value of our Naira? Will our Naira get stronger in the international market?
Of course, on paper, it is supposed to get stronger.
It is supposed
to get stronger on paper. Okay. But with the reality on ground, with what NNPC and the federal government is doing, there is no way we can get a strong Naira.
But we should have hope, right?
Well, we should have hope. That is what a living dog is better than a dead lion.
All right, let's go for another break. And when we come back, another talking point: mandatory voting, democracy or dictatorship in disguise. Stick around, don't go away.
That informs.
Welcome to Dominion Broadcast House, your channel of choice, with the best stories and the best songs, where inspiration meets entertainment.
From powerful stories to thought-provoking conversations, we bring you content that informs, entertains, and transforms.
Catch top-notch entertainment, including movies, talk shows, and insightful programs curated just for you.
Looking for cutting-edge documentaries, exclusive interviews, and lifestyle shows that matter? We have got it all.
Stay ahead with the latest trends, inspiring success stories, and must-watch TV moments only on Dominion Television.
Join a community that celebrates excellence, innovation, and African storytelling at its finest.
Don't miss out. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on all our social media platforms, and watch Dominion Television today.
Their listener, it's still the agenda, and we're looking at the mandatory voting, democracy or dictatorship. Well, the recent bill proposed by the House of the National Assembly, basically the Senate and the House of Reps in Abuja, which seeks to impose a 6-month jail term or a fine of 100,000 naira, or both, on Nigerians who do not vote in elections, has sparked intense debate. The bill, titled Bill for an Act to Amend the Electoral Act 2022 to make it mandatory for all Nigerians of majority age to vote in all national and state elections and for related matters, is being criticized as oppressive, unconstitutional, and an outright violation of fundamental human rights. The Social Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP, has rightfully called on the Senate President and the Speaker of the Federal House of Representatives, Tajuddin Abbas and Akpabio, respectively, to withdraw this bill, arguing that it contradicts the principles of democracy. The right to vote is also the right not to vote. Forcing people to participate under the threat of jail time is a clear attack on individual freedoms. This is according to SERAP. But the questions here is, firstly, does forced voting equate to true democracy? That's one question to ask. Dolapo Anjorin, let's start here. When you force people to vote, does that mean you're practicing democracy? And what are your thoughts on this mandatory voting or go to jail?
Well, on the issue of voting, I think it's an exclusive right to either vote or not to vote. I think what they should be doing, or the bill that should be formulated, is a bill that will encourage more political participation, more voters turnout, find out the reasons why people do not want to vote.
Why there's apathy.
Where there is why is there voters' apathy? Take a look at the last election. INEC said it categorically. They went to Chatham House. They said there will be transmission of election results to the IREV by the beavers. What happened on the election day? Voicemail. That in itself has created a lot of voter apathy. And when you look at the last election, a lot of Nigerians were actually interested in voting. Even though according to data, it shows that that's the election cycle that we had, the lowest turnout of voters.
Yeah, but I feel there was a political consciousness in the last election.
There's a reawakening. And I'm finding it difficult to, juxtapose what I was seeing around
the reality on ground and the data provided.
Yes, and the data provided.
Okay.
It's very, very difficult for me to reconcile it.
They're in dissonance.
Yes, personally, it's my own personal opinion to actually reconcile those two together, because people who were not interested in politics became interested in politics because they preferred a particular candidate, and it woke up, a particular voting bloc, which many Nigerians believe will change the tide of, the election. But unfortunately, seeing the data, it shows that, that's one of the worst elections where we have had, the lowest voters turnout, in the history of elections in Nigeria. And, putting into the mix with the way the elections went, where there is so many irregularities, and, the INEC chairman is saying go to court, it has really, really killed, the morale of the Nigerian populace, because they don't see this country, holding any free and fair elections. So some of these election irregularities have actually caused, voter apathy. When you look at the percentage with which the eventual winner got into power with 36%, it doesn't scream of legitimacy. It doesn't scream of legitimacy, because I'm going somewhere.
With the hands of the umpire.
I'm going somewhere, because before you can say you have won an election, you should have about 50% at least of the votes. In some developed countries like Turkey,
the constitution says 25% in 2/3.
Yes, exactly. So the National Assembly should be looking at, amending that part of this constitution, whereby you cannot become the winner of an election except you score 50% of the votes, or above 50% of the votes
of the total number of vote cast.
Yes.
Okay.
So as an average Nigerian, when you look at the results, you find out that 36%, someone who scored 36%, actually won the election. And, you throw into the mix also the irregularities that happened, during the elections, and you feel cheated, that your votes actually did not count.
All right, because of our time, let's go straight. Should citizens be punished for not casting their vote?
Citizens should never be punished, because if citizens are punished, it's no longer a democracy. It is tilting towards authoritarian rule, or let me say, fascism.
Wow, interesting. Dolapo Anjorin, before we take our leave, your final thoughts on the issue of Naira for crude and the mandatory voting.
Well, for Naira for crude, I would say that Nigeria has crude oil. We export crude oil. We import PMS. We have local refineries. Nigeria said they will supply local refineries with crude oil. And the PIA is being ignored. The NNPC is now borrowing dollars and using that same crude oil that should have gone to local refineries as collateral. Basically the NNPC is exporting crude oil. The local refinery is now importing crude oil. CBN dollars are used importing crude oil. NNPC is also bringing back dollars that's used as interest charge into the economy and we say we want a strong Naira. With this scenario that I've painted, we can never have a strong Naira. Let those at the ends of affairs do the right thing. And as for mandatory voting, I think that bill should not scale utmost second reading. It should be quashed. Bless you.
All right, Dolapo. Dolapo, thank you for featuring here this morning. And dear listener or dear viewer, it's a wrap on the agenda this morning. Agenda comes again your way on Monday on this dial, Dominion TV. I'm Chike Ogbogu. Let's keep the conversation going. Do follow us on all our social media platforms on Dominion Broadcast and YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok is at Dominion Broadcast, and on the app X, it's at Dominion Cast. I am Chike Ogbogu. Do have a great day and stay safe.